character, a woman's made out of blood. She's made out of congealed blood. So I thought, hey, I'll try and illustrate this image, you know. And I'm like, I don't really want the image to be out there on the Discord, et cetera, et cetera. But anyway, whatever. I'll just try it and see. It's like, no, blood is banned. So I go, okay, woman. I started off with woman made of blood in a spooky forest, right? And then I went, woman made of jam in a spooky forest. And then this woman appeared who's made out of this horrible purple jam. I go, no, woman made of raspberry jam in a spooky forest. And I still didn't get to what I wanted, right? And it would have been so much easier just to give it to an artist.
Totally, just sketch it up.
Get them to do it, you know, and that's my vision for the film.
Red liquid, Alex. Red liquid.
Red liquid. Okay, I'll try that one next. So thank you, Brendan Young. Thank you, Josh Tanner, for joining us on our second inaugural Troublemakers experience. As I was saying before, the whole point of the exercise is to have other people listen to or hear what you both have to say about being independent filmmakers, and, you know, trials and tribulations, and also if we can add any helpful advice for people who are going through the same turmoil that we might all be experiencing. So if we could start with you both, just a quick little nutshell version of where you are at as filmmakers, what you've, you know, just a quick brief description of that. So Josh, if we could start with you, that would be great.
Sure. My name's Josh Tanner. For the last 10, probably longer years, I've been making genre short films, sci-fi, horror, thriller, you know, working my way up to hopefully making my first feature soon. I had a short, and all of my shorts are on VIDIVERSE, obviously, ranging from The Landing, which was a science fiction period drama, to Wandering Soul, which was a Vietnam War set ghost story. And apologies for my little dog barking her head off. The perfect timing.
Good. Again, that adds to the anarchy. So I highly endorse that happening.
And basically have been working my way through short films to make my first feature, hopefully soon.
Fantastic. And Brendan?
Well, my name's Brendan Young, and I'm a writer, director, cinematographer, occasional editor. Now I'm skilled up and I can do basically everything, record sound if I have to. But look, I've been in the business for quite a long time. I went to film school as a very young person and came out of AFTRS with a sci-fi genre film. And my aim was always to make interesting and reasonably kind of entertaining sort of genre films. But, you know, I've had a sort of interesting career because I've been sort of up and down what I call the greasy pole of, show business. And so I've had, times where I've had some short films do very well with my idea to move on to features, which is obviously, like, I think most of us filmmakers are our first ambition. But that sort of sidelined into documentaries, which I'd made a number for ABC, SBS. But really, all along I've been trying to, consolidate all my sort of various things. I spent many years directing commercials, and I indeed started out at your company, Alex, Meaningful Eye Contact, which when I first left film school, I joined your company, which was, in my opinion, the premier production company in Australia at the time. And in a way, Meaningful Eye Contact was my second film school. And again, at that company, I got to do a lot of things, write, shoot, direct. It was a great experience. But I guess, strangely for me, I've been on some tangential journeys, and sometimes satisfying, sometimes really soul-destroying. So what I've decided to do, and part of my film The Widow, which is on VIDIVERSE, was to literally go to ground zero and start again. at this slightly senior age of my life. And the idea was to reset the whole situation for me as a filmmaker. I believe the perception of who I, what I was doing, it sort of got lost in the kind of, the sort of, quixotic journeys to try and get things happening. So I was in Sydney most of my adult life, and I moved back to Melbourne, where I am now. And I decided to make a proof of concept film to help make a feature. And The Widow was that project. And that's changed. That morphed into a 6-part limited series drama, which I'm now putting the final touches on.
Brendan, can I, because that's the next question I was going to ask you guys, is how did you get your films made before we go on to, and what are you going to do next and how are you going to get that made, But that's terrific. And thank you for the kind words about that illustrious organization that we were all part of, Meaningful Eye Contact, which started off as a bunch of guys out of film school,
amazing,
making music videos and commercials, and we made a bunch of more music videos and commercials, and started then representing other directors like Brendan and Nick Donkin, who was his directing partner at the time, in order to facilitate filmmakers to make other stuff. And in those days, advertising for us was the main thrust, and then we did do one feature film through Meaningful Eye Contact. My first feature, Spirits of the Air, Gremlins of the Clouds. But Josh, just going back to you for a moment, you've made 3 short films that are all really great, I think, and they're all on VIDIVERSE. I'm very proud to say we gave you your own pack called Spaced, I think.
Yeah, I think it's 4 short films.
It's 4 short films. Sorry. Yeah. One of the reasons that they seem, I couldn't remember exactly how many, apart from the fact that I've seen too many short films for any one lifetime sustain in the last 6 months, is that they're all incredibly consistently stylistic. I think you have a very commercial, dare I say, Spielbergian style about your work, which is believe me, that's a real positive. And I think they hold together really, really well. And I think, I think one of the great things about seeing them all together as a series is, I hope people with the ability to allow you to make a feature can see the merit of your work over a feature-length format. And to me, in my mind, it's a no-brainer that you should be making feature films. There's no question.
Thank you.
So tell us a little bit about how you. I know it's hard to be specific about a whole bunch of films, but
sure.
One of the things that comes out of seeing your films is, oh, that's the set from Superman. That you managed to somehow get your mitts on and repurpose, which is a wonderful kind of Roger Corman style of making films. Just absolutely. Whatever you can grab, you get it done somehow. But somehow through it, you've sustained your high production qualities, which is great. But tell us a little bit about your methodology overall and how you go about making your short films, how you get them financed, how you get them produced.
Each one, as you'd imagine, has been a different, puzzle to put together. But the Landing, which I like to tell people was my first short film. I made other shorts before then that aren't online, and I wouldn't dare let anyone see publicly. So don't ask Alex to put them on VIDIVERSE.
Okay, I'll expect that.
The Landing was sort of a combination of, I remember back in, I think it was 2012 when we first sort of put the thing together, was there were the screen resource centres around the country. So I think New South Wales had Metro Screen. I'm not sure what the Victorian one was called, but in Queensland, in Queensland we had QPix. So QPix, we submitted the script to them, and we got what we like to call our seed funding of like 15 grand, and then we went and took that money, and when I say we, my partner, co-writer, producer, wife, Jade Vanderlei, we sort of went to some corporate people that we had done corporate videos for, who were very sort of invested in took a keen interest in the films we had made up until that point. And yeah, we got them to sort of put some money in and built our budget up. So we were able to really kind of have sort of a first really, high quality short film that felt cinematic and everything like that. And then once that film went off and, won Best Short Film at Sitges Film Festival and a bunch of other festivals, then we used that momentum to go to Screen Australia, who financed Wandering Soul. And then I think the next one was The Rizzle, which unfortunately isn't on VIDIVERSE because Hulu in the States owns it. That was funded by 20th Century Fox at the time, which is now Disney. And then Reverse was funded just out of.
So they financed it. It was a short film you're talking about?
Yeah.
How did that come about? How did they finance a short film?
So that one was. So I think they had like a small digital department within 20th Century Fox that did a lot of sort of short form content, or they did digital features that had gone to Netflix and stuff like that. Right. And they had basically they'd had Hulu ask for to commission a bunch of short films that would screen as a part of their Halloween festivities on Hulu. And we had sort of just had one of the people that were like a talent seeker reach out and had seen the landing and sort of went, hey, would you be interested in putting a script in? So we put a script in and got financed.
Yeah.
And then Reverse, we funded really out of our own pockets. Jade and her business partner, Darren Watts, sort of had a bit of money as well and threw that into the mix. And
did you have permission to shoot in that parking lot, or did you?
We did, and it cost like $5,000 for the night.
Really?
I swear it was about half our budget.
No, it's just I've shot in parking lots without permission, and I find that it's just as effective.
Well, they had guards. They were ticket guards, security. There's no way we.
Yeah, you don't want to mess with them.
But that ironically, was like the lowest budget of all the short films we've made recently, and that was the most successful. That got me representation with, UTA, and then
really the parking one, the parking lot one. Interesting. It's interesting the way
it's bizarre
people's minds work in this business. And then that's great, Josh. Thank you for that. And then Brendan, tell us a little bit about The Widow and how you got that made, because that was quite a Herculean effort, I've got to say.
Yeah.
Again, stylistically, great work. I really do think it's a wonderful stylistic film. Touching all your little signposts along the way, your obsessions that I know you've had since day one, Italian movies and Italian culture generally, but I think you've crafted a really great piece, and now I know you're hoping to turn that into a series, and I think it's a terrific potential for an ongoing series. But tell us a little bit about how you got that first proof of concept made. Which I think, it's a bit much it's a bit demeaning to call it proof of concept, because it actually sustains beautifully as a film in its own right. It's a very haunting, strong ending to the film, which I think is really always important. I just think it works great as a piece unto itself. But if it allows you to get to that series, then that's great. That's terrific. So.
Well, it's interesting, Alex, because as you know, I mean, we've known each other for quite a long time, and I've been, participating in the industry, the local industry, in various forms. So, trying to get certain projects financed by funding bodies, state and federal. Sometimes, occasionally, getting finance, and sometimes not. And I got to a point where I literally hit a brick wall. I just said, I'm not going anywhere where I want to be. I'm nowhere where I want to be. And I think it was my partner, Kathy, who's been a great ally in this whole process, sort of said to me, what do you really want to do the most? And I said, well, I want to tell this particular story. I want to make a great, sophisticated, intelligent Australian crime film, which I hadn't really seen much of, to be really honest. But I was really committed to the idea that if I could demonstrate that what I was doing wasn't kind of outside the circle of genre, that it would, it would lead to, supporting the idea to do it as a bigger project. But basically, Alex, I had to kind of almost like, I did a little bit of initial interactions with some funding body people. I mean, I could be really frank about this. And, since I was in Melbourne, I spoke to Film Victoria, now Screen Victoria, and a few people behind the scenes in Screen Australia. I basically found out there was nowhere on hell in earth that I would have any support for this film. And so what we did is that Kathy and I just basically decided to crowdfund it. And we kind of...
Sorry to interrupt for a moment, and can I say that's quite amazing to me, because for a start, your film is about Italian Australians, so it's about immigrants, about they're sadly for your project they're white immigrants, which maybe is not as good as something else. But it's a female lead, and you have with Kathy's involvement, you have a substantial female presence on the production. Her being much more famous than you maybe would have helped as well. And so I find it extraordinary that the funding bodies weren't prepared to at least give you some level of support, because you're ticking a few boxes there. So,
but that's the interesting thing, Alex, and I think it's good to discuss this in relation to indie filmmakers. It's certainly in Australia where generally speaking, our main pathway to finance is initially funding bodies and state funding bodies and so forth. But what I discovered, which was, look, I've been in and out of the game for years, so I kind of know the terrain reasonably well. But what I discovered in recent times, and particularly when I went to do The Widow, which was in 2017, I started to do that. The landscape had changed where there were prerequisites even before you could even submit. Without going into boring detail, it meant that that someone like myself, even though my project, I think, touches on, dare I say, an aspect of Australian culture which is, funnily enough, not well represented.
I'd agree with that. Yeah,
and also that it was a genre film, but it was actually also a kind of character study as well, and I had a lot of interesting things going on for it. But all that aside, when you hit a brick wall, you go, well, what do you do next? And you go, okay, well, we're just going to do it ourselves. And so we started this crowdfunding campaign through the Australian Cultural Fund. And what I did was that I used Facebook as the kind of major port of call. I actually staged the entire campaign on Facebook. So I just turned my page into a Widow crowdfunding page. And I just drove that for, I think, 50 days, day after day, putting little stories out. And because we had made a 4-minute trailer for The Widow, I mean, I went off and made a 4-minute trailer to, again, advertise and promote the crowdfund. But in itself, it's a great little tiny piece of filmmaking, which I was very proud of to do literally on a weekend with a couple of friends and some of the actors. And so we were able to sort of like actually, I could actually feel content day after day, obviously promoting and encouraging people to donate to the fund. And I did really well. I mean, I was actually quite shocked. When I say that, I guess in a way, I'd always been a bit sort of nervous about how crowdfunding works and does it actually work and are people bored and, but in our case, I think we engaged our audience really correctly.
I was observing that from a distance, of course, as well at the time, and I think you're right. I think you did manage to engage people. I think also you did it at the right time, because
I
don't know that right now crowdfunding is as potent as it once was. I think now that in the world where people ask for money to travel overseas just because we should give individuals money to travel overseas even though we don't know them, I think it's somehow watered down the whole concept of crowdfunding, that you get something in return. And I think also from your point of view, I think you're a well-liked individual, as we know from knowing you as long as I do. people generally like you in the so-called industry, and people are probably more willing to support someone like yourself than someone that they don't like as much. So I think that probably worked to your advantage as well,
But you're right. But you're right. It was a time, and there was a window.
Yeah.
And I think that window is actually closed somewhat. And
yeah.
And
Sadly.
we also had a bit of private investment as well, which is something we had a couple of
rich relatives, or
weren't relatives, but they were actually friends who were well healed.
Yeah.
And they loved the project. They wanted.
You still have friends who are well healed, really?
Yeah, I mean,
Wow.
it's amazing. I mean, I'm in shock because I go like, how do you actually exist in this world well healed? But they did, and they were very generous, and so we accrued enough money to go and put this together. But when we went off to shoot the film, it was kind of I had obviously, Alex, I've got a lot of friends in the industry, for crew and so forth. But weirdly, some of my my choices, the editor I wanted to use, the composer I wanted to use, understandably they were employed on much bigger projects, features and so forth, and I was kind of stuck with what am I going to do? So I had to edit my own film. Kathy, and it was great, came on to compose the score. It was something she's always wanted to do, and then as she said to me, who the hell are you going to get to compose this score and be able to boss around and with the shit money that you've got to pay me? So I said, yeah, you got a point there, Kathy. So so in a way, and the crew was a mix of students, interns, and professional people. It was a kind of ragtag bunch, and then we shot. But one thing I did have was some terrific actors, and it goes without saying that that casting Daniela Farinacci in that lead role, I mean, she was brilliant and perfect for me. But also people like Steve Bastoni, people who've been in the industry for many years. And
and that's a great cast. And so how did you shoot it? Did you shoot it over a period of time, or did you shoot it weekends, or how did that work?
So we originally had an 8-day shoot scheduled, and we went and shot that. But we had, as always, the millions of war stories. The first day was a complete washout, so we lost a day. And so we shot for those 8 days on a kind of really, intense kind of pressure cooker situation. And then I got back after that, and obviously the film wasn't completely shot. So there were pickups scheduled about a month later. But then I realized, and just getting back to your point, Alex, about just going beyond the proof of concept, I actually wanted to make a standalone piece that was completely contained and entertaining. So I wrote more scenes, like an idiot that I am.
Yeah.
And I went and shot more scenes in the various pickups. And so over sort of that was a 2-month break, then there was a 3-month break, shot some more pickups. And then when I was editing, probably towards the end of the edit, I did one more major pickup, which was another scene that was written. And so it was kind of cobbled together, if you will, as I was editing it and going, no.
And then did you have to go try and find more funds for post-production? And
correct. Yeah, correct.
And so, you say you edited it yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, in the past, I've cut, some music videos and commercials and things.
Yeah.
It's not something I say, hey, I'm a great editor by any stretch. And there's so many brilliant people I love working with. But it was I was just forced down this thing. And so, but I turned to a lot of my, incredibly talented editor friends and people like, Alexander Ceschini, and it obviously would harass them and say, can you look at my, rough cut and give me some feedback? And so, I sort of drew on some of my industry friends who are very well established and very good at their craft.
Yeah.
Give me a bit of feedback.
I think that's something that not enough people do actually locally is they, when I was working in the States for extended periods of time, I had my network of people that were all highly regarded filmmakers, and I'd bring them in and show them stuff, show them a cut. And I'm often surprised at how little that goes on with our local community of filmmakers. I think Australians have this goes right back to, the way restaurants work in Australia, where if you have an Italian restaurant on a street, when the next Italian restaurant moves in next door or across the road, you start to feel really threatened And that's very counterproductive, because the whole point of a bunch of different restaurants gathering in the one area is more reason for people to go to that restaurant, that district, and the more people that go don't make it into your restaurant or make it into the one across the road. If it's more successful than yours, they'll come over to yours. They'll go, we'll try that one instead, and that seems to be the way the film industry works. It seems to be an Australian mindset, quite frankly, which really holds our culture. It holds our culture back, and it's like, all of us doing well means that we will all do well, right? That's the simple version. We shouldn't feel threatened by the people. We should embrace other people's, particularly if you trust the other people and you like them and you like their work, get their opinion, gauge their opinion, show them your work. And if they don't like something and they tell you, and you hear that enough from a lot of sources, and fix it, change it, improve it,
Completely.
So, so Josh, I think this whole thing of, taking control of your destiny as a filmmaker is really important for us indie filmmakers. And, definitely. I've sort of been lucky, I want to say. I mean, people think I'm luckier than I actually have been. I've also been very unlucky in many ways. And, the grass is always greener or whatever. But I've kind of got sidetracked into the mainstream Hollywood world where, you agree on a script, which is a battle it's always been, but you get to with a studio, you agree on a script, and the studio go, we want to make this. And they make an offer to a big movie star for $20 million, and away you go. That's all it takes, but they have the bank balance to go to that star and give them $20 million, So here we are in the indie world where we're ruled by casting and not being able to get the right people and not being able to get the budget to correlate with the person you want and all that sort of stuff, So that's a very different world to live in. But the great thing about the indie world, if you take the approach that Brendan's taken, and I'm sure you've taken as well, is that you just go and you make stuff like your parking lot film, or car park film, as we should call it, saying parking lot, like in America, that's the way to get stuff made. You just go and you do it, and lo and behold, that's what the industry paid attention to with you, which is great, but it's also kind of ironic and surprising all at once. So you obviously what's your philosophy in terms of taking control of that destiny and getting stuff made, getting stuff edited, getting stuff finished and done? That you can maybe share with us,
Absolutely. I mean, I think that is ultimately what makes careers, right? It's nothing is ever going to be handed to you on a silver platter. You might find yourself in, really great situations where you've made a short film, or you've done something or written a script that sort of gets a lot of buzz, but it's absolutely zero guarantee that anything is going to sort of happen with it. I've had, had this, the short films, like in particular Reverse, be very successful and get opportunities to pitch on projects and get feature projects that then end up going nowhere, and it's what I've discovered is, particularly as a first time filmmaker, it's really hard to get your first feature made when the budget sits around a $10 million area, and I almost felt like, in hindsight, it's almost like I was trying to jump the queue in a sense, because what I realized was you have to make something really low budget to get in. Almost, there are exceptions to the rule, and good on those people who make that magic happen. But, I had a project this year which sort of has sort of hit a large wall, and I just had this epiphany of like, what do they say? The cavalry isn't coming. Like you literally have to be the master of your own destiny, because it's just not going to be handed to you. So I kind of down tools and figured out.
Of course, the goalposts keep shifting and getting smaller, right?
Constantly.
That's right.
It all keeps getting smaller and smaller. That hoop you've got to get your ball through,
Yeah.
It's the technology getting more affordable, and getting quicker and easier and all that sort of stuff. It's a great thing for filmmakers, but it also works against us, because then the requirements are, all the money men are all those people we're talking about at the top of that pyramid, that strange Illuminati cult or whatever they are. They know everything. A lot of the time they're responsible for the technology coming to the fore. I get very suspicious about Mid-Journey and all this AI stuff that's coming out. I'm going, what's behind that? What is behind the notion of living in the dying days of the human artist that I sometimes feel we're living through? The conspiracy theorist goes, of course they want to retain control as the internet comes to the fore. For a moment, it seems like the artists can wrestle back control. Oh, no, they've worked it all out already. They've already laid the groundwork. That is the pyramid people. They've laid the groundwork so that they maintain control as they've always had control. They're not going to relinquish it so easily. So that to me is part of the issue right now, is that short of us going, you know what, we take control over the whole thing. And that's one of the reasons, in complete honesty, the reason I built VIDIVERSE is, whether or not it becomes a fiscally, successful model or not, it just felt great to go, you know what, not only can I make films now, but I can just get them out there and have people watch them and not have YouTube make money out of my films, Even just that alone is a great thing, and then use YouTube to present things like this that are blatant promotions of VIDIVERSE, trying to get us more subscribers, which is all this is, So I guess that's the key is how do either of you see a way for us to retain or claw back some level of control over our own filmmakers' destiny? Do you see a way to do that?
I don't know. And I've been thinking about this a lot, Alex, because obviously my whole childhood dream and my ambition was to be a filmmaker, like some of the people I admire, and and so forth. But the reality is even more so now than ever before, of being literally a hired gun. In a sort of expansive network, but now we have streaming content, and it's a huge desire to have content generated. So how do you navigate your way through it? Now, it's interesting. I've been following Paul Schrader, writer director.
I'm his Facebook friend as well.
But Paul's actually been very vocal about a lot of this stuff.
Sure, yeah.
And he said that the only way, and even he's a guy that was like so part of the kind of Hollywood juggernaut of the 70s and 80s. And
although he never really was. But anyway,
I know what you're saying. He was sort of always 1 foot out.
He was always on the periphery in many ways.
Yeah, they always thought he was a bit sus and a bit twisted.
Yeah.
But what he's basically...
He was a troublemaker like me.
He was a big troublemaker.
Yeah, like me. And it's like people don't like to hear honest opinions in Hollywood.
And as you know, he's very blatant up front, and I admire him amazingly for this. But what I noticed, he said, look, what he's worked out is if he can keep the budget low, $5 million and under US, and we all know that that's a very low budget film in American terms. He said, I have total control. I can do what I want. I can cast who I want. And he said, this formula is kind of working. And the truth is, he's having the most productive time of his entire career. Yeah. He's going from film to film. He's writing feverishly. He's getting his projects going. How that translates to people like, say, Josh and I don't know. I mean, having looked at Josh's films, I mean, I agree with you, Alex. I mean, he shows. Sorry if I'm speaking in the third person. Josh is making intelligent mainstream genre content, and he wants to have a seat at the table. I'm sure, Josh, to be able to go and do your features, and obviously have some kind of modicum of control of the sort of content, but. It's a really strange pathway now. In fact, the pathway has been upended 5 times over in probably the last 5 or 6 years.
Very much so. I mean, look, the thing that drives me nuts is, when filmmakers are producing stuff in order to get a gig with Marvel or something like that, and I've poo-pooed that quite publicly because I feel like I don't think that's a solution. Yeah, you might get a film with Marvel, you might get one film with Marvel, and you might, make you the biggest amount of money you've ever made in your entire life, but it'll probably be the biggest amount of money you've ever made, I always used to go, about filmmakers who reach that level of success and seem to then just make another one and then another one and then another one. And I go, well, the reason they do that is because they genuinely like making those films, and they're also compliant and do what the power brokers in those franchises tell them to do. There's no question. Like when you do a Marvel movie, you're lucky if you get to direct the actor on the set in the costume that they've already worked out, in the storyline that's already been told. All the action stuff gets done by a whole other unit. It gets storyboarded, gets prevised. Everything happens regardless of who the director is, So the director is not really what I would call a director. They're a traffic cop, as they were in the traditional sense of like network television in the 70s and 80s. That's what they come in and they do their... I don't know what they do. I don't know what a director does, if they come in and they're not like a series director who goes from show to show, but you come in and you do a couple of episodes. What do you do? What do you say to the actors? It's like, yeah, I like the show. It's great. I think your character's terrific, Okay, now and action, because it's like, what do you do? They know their character better than you. The script writers are doing their work, etc. So that's what doing a Marvel film is all about. If you want to do that in your career, then great, fantastic. Good luck to you, and you'll make a lot more money than I've ever made, and any of us will probably make. Sure. And that's great. But it is to me about how do you sustain if you have a voice, which both of you guys do, and I hope I do as well, although sometimes it's a bit hard to hear these days.
Certainly do, Alex.
You want to make your thing, and Hollywood can't facilitate that thing. And yes, like genre does cost a certain amount of money to make. We're lowering the cost all the time, but there is a certain cost involved to do your story set in outer space or whatever you want to do, How do you do that? That's the real key, And then when you do it, I mean, Josh, with your film, that 20th Century Fox finance, which is very nice of them, but you say they end up owning it. To me, that's... Yeah, I mean, it's great. You got to make a film, and I'm sure, and they're happy that they can exploit you in that way, and you're probably happy to be exploited in that way. But you can't sustain a career and make more and more films with that notion where someone finances you, and then for the price of them giving you the money, some pitiful amount of money to make your film that you scrape together and get it done to a very high production value, they end up owning the whole thing. I mean, that's insane. That's absolutely insane. But yet that is the rule of filmmaking that we all live under. That's the way the industry has been built, So unless we can completely alter that structure and completely create something new from the ground up, artists will always be at that mercy, whether or not they're spending $150 million making a movie, or they're doing something in AI at home on their own, which we'll get to, I'm sure, and make an entire film in that way. So I guess to me, it's like how, and I'm genuinely asking a question because I don't know what the answer is. I mean, I'm trying to find the answer with models that we are creating through VIDIVERSE and Heretic Foundation, etc. But I don't really know what the answer is, and the more I hear other filmmakers, I mean, the more filmmakers I hear talking, they all have the same issues, right? Nothing has surprised me so far, but I keep looking for someone with that glorious solution, which maybe I'll never find. But anyway, it's worth discussing.
But Alex, isn't the problem really? I mean, we can physically manifest stuff. Go out and shoot something and cobble together some actor friends and shoot stuff, whatever, make content.
Yeah.
It's actually the means of distribution and the way we can actually get our material out there into the world, so it actually does compete on some sort of commercial level, meaning it's part of, you could see it somewhere.
It's not even that. It's because we've done that with VIDIVERSE. We've done that. It's how do you get eyes on that particular content?
I was going into that whole marketing.
That's the key, and we can't fight the advertising budgets that Netflix and all these majors have, and now they're throwing more and more into it. Disney apparently has just become the top streamer. It's beaten Netflix, I hear.
That's right. Yes,
in the last few weeks.
I read that. Yeah.
Wow. I actually just subscribed to Disney because my daughter was adamant that I do. My 14-year-old daughter. But I went, okay, I can watch the Beatles film finally get back, But I begrudgingly did it. And so I'm convinced my subscription is what put it over the top. So
it was that one little cherry.
It was just that one last one. Oh, they've just beaten Netflix. So.
But that's the thing. I mean, I'm honestly right now, Alex, about to step out into the world with a couple of projects which you're aware of, and so I'm about to sort of go and take them out there. And one's a horror feature, and the other two are international series drama, which is pretty ambitious, I know, and insane. But I just thought I've got to try something.
Yeah, well, the one that I know very much about, because I really would like to be involved with, is I think has enormous potential, and it is an international drama, as you say, but I think that's partly why it has so much potential. So I think that's really great. Look, my brain is working on two different levels, when it comes to this stuff. One is Josh's level of going out there with a $10 million movie, or maybe even more, and getting the traditional, structure to support that, which takes the time that it takes. And sometimes, as you say, Josh, you do hit that wall. But, there's never a point where you go, that movie will never get made, because there will always come a time where maybe I'm now talking again about films that I wrote 10 years ago that are now coming back. And everyone's got those films, Guillermo del Toro, who's a friend, has a closet full of scripts that he's written. And there was an article recently I read where he was going, I've wasted 20 years of my life writing scripts that have never been made. But that's not to say that they won't one day get made. Now, the older we get, the less time, and therefore the fewer movies we're going to be allowed to make in the future. So it starts to diminish after a while. But still, it's like, to me, it's like there's that level of filmmaking, right? And then there's the reverse level of filmmaking, and I like that as a concept. Reverse filmmaking is you just go and you do it, and I've done a couple of things like that, even on a humbler scale than reverse. I just went out with one actor and me and someone to help carry the gear, because I don't want to carry gear around, even though it's light. A friend who was involved, and we just went out for an afternoon. And I said, "Look, I have no idea what this film's going to be about." And we made this film. I said it's about fear, and then we started, I'd make stuff up. We go to a parking lot which we didn't have permission to shoot, and I'd say, "Okay, you've lost your car and you don't know where it is, and you can't remember what level you left it on." And I just directed the story and the actor over a few hours, and we let's go on riding on a train now. I like the look of some of the subways in Sydney, etc. And I made this film. I didn't really know what it was going to be, and some will argue that the film is boring. I don't think so. I think it's kind of interesting. It's a film called Phobos, which is also on VIDIVERSE, and it was really just me experimenting with completely unstructured filmmaking. Kubrick always used to say he'd love to just make a film without a script, that just whatever came out of his head, and even he wasn't allowed to do that. Here I am many years later, and the technology allows me to do that, what Kubrick could never do, that he wanted to do. Mind you, he probably had slightly grander visions than one actor in an illegal parking lot, But anyway, I think the point that I'm trying to make is two different levels of filmmaking, and the ground floor, the reverse level of filmmaking is a way for us to not go insane. It's a way for us to go, you know what? every day I wake up and it's the same fucking grind with like that actor doesn't want to do it for that money or whatever the bullshit's going on is. I can just go out and make a film now, you know, and forget about all that and have fun for the day, you know, and get people to see that film. Fantastic, great, you know. To me, that's something. And if there's some way of supporting that level of filmmaking, financially speaking, which I still hope that there is, then to me that's a viable alternative, you know. And who knows, in time that might become something greater, something where you can do a little bit more, you know. So just a thought, you know. So I don't think those two things exclude each other. I think they can work well with each other. I used to do ads between feature films, and again, ads were a great way to, you know, keep me alive, but also to, you know, have that filmmaking hit now and again, you know. Now it's even more direct because you can do it anytime you like. We've all got the gear, I'm sure. You guys have got all the gear and stuff.
Yep.
And so, Josh, are you editing your work as well or not?
No, I realized probably about a decade ago that editing, while I can edit, and I have a really and I you know, it was a day job for a while, you know, cutting corporate work and I really enjoy the process. I realized that there was so much more to gain from a fresh perspective of someone else's hands on the tools that didn't go through the hell of the shoots, you know. Because they would just look at it from a different perspective that wasn't like, "Ooh, I need that," or "I'd spent so much time working on that shot," or, you know. And I just the collaboration. Like I remember in the very early days, I would shoot my own stuff, and then eventually I just realized, you know, there's so much better people than me. And I think slowly I've sort of like relinquished all of the, you know, these sort of extra roles, if possible, and just created, you know, great collaborations. So that's what I definitely prefer to work with editors.
Great. Okay. Well, look, we've been nabbering for a bit, but I think the other question I want to ask you guys is, how are you going to make your next film? You know, what is the battle plan exactly, and how do you propose to get it financed? How do you propose to get it cast, etc.? So, Josh, if we could start with you, with any ideas you have, any information in that regard.
So yeah, like as I said, I'd been attached to, for the last 2 and a bit years, had been, coming up, definitely 2.5 years. I'd been attached to a US Australian co-production, which was about a $10 to $12 million budget, and we had a lot of difficulty casting, and just the scale of it was very hard to sort of get over the green line with me as a no-name director. So once everything sort of seemed like it probably wouldn't be going ahead this year, I really just sort of focused in and have written with some co-writers a horror drama, supernatural thriller that is all in one house, mostly. A couple of actors, one house. You know, it can be made for as little as possible. Pull all the favors I have left, and really the script we're just polishing the first pass of the script now. It feels great. It feels more achievable than anything we've written, and which will hopefully mean that it has the most chance to get made. So who knows? I mean, but the casting thing is the big thing. You know, is like, do we have to go to X, number of big actors to get this thing greenlit? Well, no. At least from the feedback I get, if the budget's low enough, its concept sold. It's sold on the horrorness of it, and we should be able to cast relatively, whoever we like. We'll see. We'll see if that turns out to be. But yeah, so I went down to MIF 37 South Market just because I'd never done that before, and met with a lot of sales agents and people like that, and just pitched it, verbally, and got a great response. So don't know, like it's, very early stages at the moment.
Great, fantastic. Well, all the best with that. And Brendan, what about yourself? What's your battle plan into the immediate future?
Yeah, it's a battle plan, all right. So I'm finishing up putting together the package for The Widow as a limited series drama. So I'm just polishing off the pilot episode screenplay. It's of 75 pages. I'm going to leave it at 75 pages. But, I've done all the episode breakdowns and everything. There'll be obviously a package which has got, the casting and the, all the mood boards, things like that. So basically I'm going to go out to approach a few established producers and production entities. But because my project does require some involvement, and some of it will be shot in Italy, I'm also going to try and approach some Italian production entities as well, producers. And I kind of already have reached out to a few people, and there's definitely
can I just say we have some very good connections in that regard. So
right, well, we should fabulous.
We should talk about this at some.
Yeah, definitely, point, Alex. Yeah. Because in a way, look, Alex, I'm stepping into an area I honestly don't have a lot of experience in. I mean, I think that the package of the project is as solid as a rock, and the whole point of making The Widow, the short film, was to say, if you have any doubts about the integrity of this project, watch the short film. It was made on the smell of nothing. Imagine if we had a tiny budget or even a medium budget, you can imagine how much exponentially that would be as an entertaining piece. So that's going to be an interesting thing. And as you also know, Alex, I've got this other horror project, Mantis, which we've been really lucky that we got some private finance, which again was just out of the blue, to pay our writer. I'm not writing it, to write the screenplay, and she's busy right now writing that screenplay for Mantis, and basically we'll go back and forth on that over the subsequent months. And so by next year, I'll certainly be able to be pushing that feature, horror feature, which in a way, Josh, a bit like what you're trying to do. It's kind of, contained budget. It's a genre piece. I'm just hoping that, we can find some people who are actually, see the potential and we can go with it. And the idea with that, Alex, is to keep, again, the budget at a certain level where I'm not having to push above and beyond. And that's so things like the vexing world of casting, doesn't bite us in the ass and put us into a freehold, because as we all know, I mean, once we started moving into these areas of doing bigger projects, casting is always brought up. But
sadly, I think the casting thing is not going to go away in the immediate future, because yes, there is a lot more content being produced at a lower budget level as well, and a higher budget level, and I think the sales agents themselves need to cut through, and if it's horror is a good genre. I don't want to discourage you guys, because I think you're doing absolutely the right thing. There's nothing that you're doing that isn't correct. But the casting thing is a spectre that will keep haunting us, because that's the sales agent's way of cutting through. They believe that's the one thing
that's their guarantee.
Yeah, well, they believe that it is. Generally isn't, but
particularly for
but they believe that at least there's a face that people can identify with. Sorry, say again, Josh.
I was just sorry to interrupt. I was just saying, when it comes to a first-time filmmaker as well, in terms of first-time feature, they're proved to be, crucial. Because. They probably are taking the mindset of like, oh, okay, if this newbie filmmaker, regardless of how good their short films are, if they stuff it up and if they don't do a great job, then at least so-and-so is in the film and we can sell it.
Yeah, but it's not even first-time filmmakers.
I'm aware of
that. I mean, it's, I go through it every time, because, all the actors that they push onto me have more Instagram followers than I could ever hope for. So, it's as simple as that. It's like there's more people. Yes, I have my fans. I have my followers who will go and see whatever I make, whatever's got my name on it. But it doesn't stack up against, 1 million followers on Instagram or whatever the hell these people,
So
these
TikTok
beautiful,
now.
particularly beautiful young
TikTok.
things have. You know, yeah, TikTok.
It's the
Maybe that's where I'm
TikTok is
going wrong.
It's the new
Maybe I need to
casting.
be
You know, you've got to get into TikTok,
TikTok
Alex.
influencer. Well, I believe TikTok is evil. I believe it's
Oh,
been
it's the end-
created
it's the end
by
of
Satanists.
civilization,
Yeah,
yeah.
It's
I
a
know. I really
spy
do
app.
believe
It's a
that.
spy
So
app.
I yeah. Well, it's not just that, but it's like literally because my daughter is that sort of generation who has dabbled
sure.
with TikTok, and I've told her that she's not allowed to anymore because it's really just it's horrific. I mean, it's what it's doing to people's young minds is just wrong. It should be banned. It should be like heroin or something like that. No, you can't sell heroin legally to anyone, you know, and you shouldn't be able to sell TikTok to people under a certain age, you know. It really should be banned. That's my humble opinion. So, mind you, I think most of them are like that in various ways. I just think TikTok is by far the worst, you know. But having said that, I'm going to open up my account tomorrow.
I'm looking forward to that, Alex.
You can't fight this shit, you know. I've been going on about this AI stuff,
Yeah, I know.
but it's like literally you can't fight it. It's just that's why I
everywhere.
say it's like a drug.
I've been
Because
using
you
it.
kind of go, well, that's pretty impressive. You know, you can't. What do you say? You know, it is very enticing stuff, and you find yourself with a moment.
Doesn't interest me. I find it like I look at it and I go, okay, well, visually it's kind of whatever, but it's. I mean, I still think that you know, even with all this hideous world of social media and stuff that we're bombarded with, that I think people still respond to good original ideas. I think they innately respond.
Oh, there's
to
no
it.
question. There's no question that the individual original idea is still by artists is respected the most, but by 99% of the world, it just isn't. That's just not the case. Sadly, I mean, but I think it's a fact of life. You know, otherwise, how do you explain the MCU? You just can't explain it. I mean, it's literally it's being crafted by artificial intelligence. They just, you know, maybe not specifically as such, not literally as such, but the way they make those films is they look at everything that's worked before and they heighten it, and everything that's failed, they cut away the deadwood, right?
Yeah.
So that is a form of, that's an algorithm, that's a human algorithm, but it's one that machines can adopt so much better than the human mind. So I've been hit several times through social media, of course, to embrace this script writing summit where they're going to teach us how to write scripts using AI, right?
What? But why?
Filmmakers. No, it's like, I'm like, go away, you evil fuckers. I don't want to know about this shit, you know? So I'm going to embrace something that's going to put me me and all other artists in the world out of a job effectively. While the majority of the population don't respect the original artist's voice, now that ScoMo is gone, maybe things will be a bit better now in Australia.
Yes.
But while that's the case, and there's so little respect for the individual original artist's voice, as there is clearly in Hollywood. I mean, Hollywood is all about the franchise, all about you fitting in like a cog in the machine, more so than it's ever been in its entire history. You know,
Wildly mutated.
Yeah. How The Wizard of Oz was ever made with multiple directors and retained such a pure vision to the point where it's still one of my favorite films of all time. In that context, it's because people were genuinely allowed to be creative, right? And now, Marvel Universe is all done with, again, an army of creative voices, and they all align to the same staid, boring, old school vision of what a story is all about. That tells you a lot about the forces at play, So it's sadly, I think AI is here to stay, and it will rule our lives more and more and more, And I think the best we can hope for is that as filmmakers and artists, we can use it to our own advantage before it uses us, right? You know, that's really, I think,
I have been using AI. It's funny you mentioned Midjourney, because I've been having a lot of fun with Midjourney.
Yeah.
And I agree. I had a complete existential crisis when I started using it, because I was like, holy shit, in 20, 30, 40 years, the machines are going to be making the movies. There's not going to be people, involved in this. But
I fear you're right. Look, the frustrating thing about Midjourney and all these other ones as well, DALL-E, and there's a few others as well, is that you play with them for a while and you quickly get to, if you're after a specific idea, and even worse, if you have a specific image in your brain, which is where I always start. That's where I've always started with films. I do a sketch first before I write the script, right? That's where I've always come from. And I do it to this day. I keep sketchbooks, and I have visuals that I draw them, and then I try and plug them into scripts, sometimes to the detriment of the script, but I don't care, because I'm all about crafting these visions, that I have. So if you have a specific idea that you're trying to get to, then these AI programs are probably the worst way to get to those ideas. It's much better, much more expedient to do a sketch, to give it to a really good artist and say, here's my rough idea. Can you make this now something beautiful, And they employ their own techniques to do it. But if you're hunting for that specific, it will take you hours to get anywhere near it. And you go, no, that's completely wrong. That's ludicrous. That's nothing like what I imagined. And even it's hilarious, but I don't know whether you've encountered this on Midjourney, but there are certain words that are banned on Midjourney, right?
Really?
Yeah. You put in blood, which is something that I often like to work with.
Sure. Hey,
it says, sorry, we can't. Blood is a banned word, and I'm like, what the fuck? Why is blood
write
banned?
Red, you gotta write red liquid.
Yeah, so
red liquid.
I had a vision for my feature where I wanted to. There's a woman a woman's made out of blood. She's made out of congealed blood. And I thought, hey, I'll try and illustrate this image, and I'm like, I don't really want the image to be out there on the Discord, et cetera. But anyway, whatever. I'll just try it and see. It's like, no, blood is banned. So I go, okay, woman. I started off with woman made of blood in a spooky forest, right? And then I went, woman made of jam in a spooky forest. And then this woman appeared who's made out of this horrible purple jam. I go, no, woman made of raspberry jam in a spooky forest. And I still didn't get to what I wanted, right? And it would have been so much easier just to give it to an artist.
Totally, just sketch it up.
Get them to do it, and that's my vision for the film.
Red liquid, Alex. Red liquid.
Red liquid. Okay, I'll try that one next. So that they'll work that out, and then horrifically they'll work out the film version, the cinematic version of it.
100%.
And then yes, there'll still be a market for people who can't be bothered going woman made of red jam in a forest and can't ever have that idea. And there'll be a market for people who want to watch something that someone's had that idea, but still, it's like you become a kind of an editor of artificial intelligence. You become subservient as an artist to artificial intelligence. You can't go sign it proudly, I did this by Alex Proyas. You got to go, I sort of came up with some weird, crappy idea that I maybe dreamt that I maybe got out of someone else's film. I saw it somewhere else. And then the artificial intelligence did all the hard lifting.
Yeah.
So that's my real concern about this stuff. Yeah. And the worst thing about it is that it demeans the artist's role, right? It makes the powers that be, who I believe are responsible for Midjourney, as we said, I believe that those powers that be are continuing to erode the value of the individual artist to the point where it becomes meaningless one day. Everyone can sit at home going...
because ultimately what it's doing is just stealing every piece of artwork that's been made by your wonderful human hands, and then looking at all of that and computing it all, and then giving you something that's like, it's not real. It's not
reconstituted.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But it is still again incredibly tempting to use, because it's a bit like dreams. You know, the imagery that AI can come up with is stuff that when you take all the, you know, or you smoke a little bit of something or whatever you use to become creative, it takes the connections away. It strips the logic-based connection, and it comes up in a very free-form, random fashion.
Yeah.
Something that is, yes, it's informed by everything that's ever been created by human artists, but so is life. I mean, so are dreams. Dreams are informed by everything in your life that has happened to you and other people's lives possibly.
But I've been leaning into that. You know, anything that I'm searching on there is is stuff that I want to be outside the box. I want them to get it all messy and weird, because that's the stuff. Like, it's literally using it for, you know, it's oddness, you know, it's uncanny valley, you know.
I agree.
If I'm looking for like an image of a ghost, if I'm looking for an image of a ghost, it's probably going to give me something that's better than I could ever dream up, because it's going to get confused. And
you got to be careful though, because you got to be careful. I've been doing the same thing, so I know exactly what you're talking about. There's a character in one of my stories that I just literally typed in the words, which is God of Chaos, right? And it created some amazing stuff, right? Which I actually published on Facebook, I think, last night. And yes, I felt the same way. But the thing is, anyone else typing those words in is going to get something like that, you know? Yeah. And anyone typing ghost in, or whatever your character is going to get something like that. And so when all the filmmakers are using the same techniques, rather than relying on being the next HR Giga and literally coming up with something that is so authentically original and theirs, we won't have the next HR Giga. You know, that person will just never appear, because everyone's using the same techniques. I mean, this does erode creativity big time in the culture, and so the next generation will not have that mindset to even want to become HR Giga. You know. So this is it's very much the double-edged sword. It's like, you know, we've unleashed the atom. We've split the atom now. Now we're going to get the good and the bad, you know.
Yeah.
Like the internet. The internet was splitting the atom as well, you know. And, you know, I hope that it's more good than bad, but the realist in me says it's more bad than good, you know. Mm-hmm. So anyway, on that delightful note,
the future.
Oh, Alex, I did want to ask you just one question.
Yes.
It's just from a filmmaker's point of view, as being a filmmaker as a part of the VIDIVERSE. I just want to know what your future ambitions for VIDIVERSE were, because obviously what I've loved, and I'm sure Josh has appreciated as well, is that we finally found a platform where you've done what you've said you did. You brought on all these international filmmakers around the world, create this platform where the films are available, and, you know, in great array of styles and genres. But what's your ambition to go further forward?
You know, it's an ever-changing thing, Brendan, and you know, again, it's one of those things. I built it and they came, right? And we've had enormous response from filmmakers like yourselves. It's been like literally overwhelming, to the point where I really thought, I can't possibly keep up with this, watching all these films, you know. Somehow I've managed to do it amongst doing my own stuff as well. And we're continuing to stay ahead of it all. Now, fortunately, I've got to say, you know, the amount of submissions we're getting is starting to taper off a little bit, which is great, because it was going up and up and up. Our subscribers have been not, you know, it's okay, but it's not like, we're not Netflix. We're far from, you know, and maybe we'll never be Netflix. But I hope that we can continue to. We want to try and look at getting some sponsorship. We want to look at creating a film festival, a Vidiverse film festival, whether or not it's a physical festival or an internet festival. We're not quite sure. We're still discussing all that at the moment, all with a view to promoting it more. There's a lot of discussion right now. We started off with a specific model, which was creating these packs of films that could all kind of add value to each other. So when people clicked the button, they knew they were buying like-minded films that they would hopefully enjoy equally. That model has been already proven, we're 6 months in or whatever we are now, to not be that effective, right? And that's why we've steered it very much back towards sponsorship, so that when you buy into the platform, you get everything. So we've gone for the Netflix model and everyone else. That's really the only thing that seems to work for people. I thought with short films it would be different, but anyway, we've been proven wrong in that regard.
But Alex, I've recently also wondered, and I'm not sure if you'd prefer some suggestions of sort of adjacent content to be suggested offline or online, but potentially the idea of there being, and whether or not you do this for everyone or just do it for some films, but having extra content, whether it's like behind the scenes or access to the shooting script from
yes, absolutely.
Because I think that's a huge thing that I think is missing from all the streaming services.
Yeah,
quite frankly.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. That costs a lot of money to set up. I mean, it's cost us a lot of money to set up what we've done.
Yeah,
but it costs a hell of a lot of money to set up. What we're talking about is a separate platform that hangs off Vidiverse that can cover all that stuff as well, because you are talking about two slightly different audiences. You're talking about the audience that are filmmakers like yourselves, and we have some of that audience, but we also now have people who they just want to watch stuff. They don't really want to engage on that level, like what we're doing here on this podcast or whatever the hell we call this. But so yes, we are, but we definitely want to do that. But again, that will come with time, and that has to come with more support. We need more support. We're out there trying to find it at the moment, because this stuff gets very expensive very, very quickly. And while we're still hunting for our supporter subscriber base, which we are very much in the throes of still trying to, find a sustainable volume of those people, which comes in time. I mean, that will be a year, 2 years down the track, maybe, that we go, wow, we've got a good bunch of subscribers, it all happens together, but that's where we're heading with it. To answer Brendan's question, eventually, I mean, I hope it happens, sooner rather than later. I don't know how long away it is, but we start to make content for Vidiverse, right? Original content. I've made some that I've called original Vidiverse content. It was stuff that I had or I've made, and I'm making another one at the moment that will premiere on Vidiverse. We've been lucky enough to get a couple of films from filmmakers who've premiered their films on Vidiverse, which has been terrific. We hope to make more. We hope to encourage people to make stuff. One of the things we're talking about with the film festival is that film festivals generally suck these days because you don't get anything for them. I mean, if it's a preeminent festival like Sitges, for example, you'll get exposure, which is great, and you were very lucky. I know the Sitges guys really well, and you were very well honoured to receive that award that you did, Josh. But then there's a stack. There's like 4,000 film festivals around the world, so there's a stack of them that don't really, for the price that you pay to submit your film, that they may or may not want to show. You don't really get a hell of a lot out of that, I've got to say. You get a little laurel to stick on your thumbnail, So, one of the things that we've been talking about with the Vidiverse Film Festival is to do it. We want to give some sort of meaningful prize, cash prize, maybe some sort of like gear of some sort as well for other, second and third prizes or whatever. and then encourage people, if it's a meaningful prize, meaningful amount of money that's being offered, and meaningful, don't think it's in the millions or anything. It's not quite that. Is encourage people to make films just for Vidiverse, to either premiere them, if you've got a short film, premiere it in this festival, and if you win, it screens only on Vidiverse. Because that's the other thing, is a lot of the content we have right now, and we've done it this way because we didn't want to piss people off by saying we're going to make you thousands of dollars. I didn't want to intrude on any other potential income streams for other people's for people's films from other sources. So I said it's a non-exclusive license, but with a festival, it will be an exclusive license if you win, which I think is a fair exchange,
That's good, yeah.
and for a period of time, and then you end up you can take your IP back after a while, because I think this is all progress towards where I want it to go in the future, which is I want filmmakers to have control of their IP. I want filmmakers to be able to afford to make their next film. And I don't want to be the guy, I don't want to end up being Netflix going, I will give you X amount of money, you make that, and then I own it forevermore. I never want to do that, because I don't want to operate under that circumstance. So when Vidiverse says it's, for filmmakers by filmmakers, we want to live up to that forevermore, which is we're not creating anything that I wouldn't want to operate under as a filmmaker. I'm trying to empower filmmakers rather than just become another form of exploitation, because there's plenty of those out there.
Yeah. Hey, Alex,
so that's the nutshell.
My battery is about to run out.
Look, we should definitely call it a day. So thanks, gentlemen. You were great, and
thank you.
Hopefully we can continue talking more about your projects. And thank you very much for doing this, and see you later.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.